All right, what's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design Live. I am Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome. I am so excited to have you. Let me turn this music off. There we go. All right. Have you picked up your paperback copy of Beyond UX Design? Master your craft beyond pixels and prototypes yet? Unlock the secrets of UX success and learn all the things they didn't teach you in school. Listen until the end for an exclusive code to get 25% off. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/book after this live event, of course. In the meantime, make sure you pay attention, very close attention. Lena's going to answer all your questions today. All right. This live event is brought to you by Wix Studio. If you're thinking about redoing your portfolio or kicking off a new website project, listen up. I only have 30 seconds to tell you about Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprise. So here are a few things that you can do from start to finish in 30 seconds or less on Studio. You can adapt your designs for every device with responsive AI. You can jump seamlessly between front end and back end. You can speed up projects with an AI code assistant. You can start a design library, reuse full stack apps and UI components across multiple sites. Well, the time's up, but the list keeps going. Step into Wix Studio and see for yourself. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/Wix to start creating today. This live event is also brought to you by Jeff White and his UX Storytelling Toolkit. Now, lots of people talk about the importance of storytelling, but Jeff brings actionable clarity to storytelling, and he shows you exactly how to do it. He breaks down different real-world scenarios like how to use storytelling methods to present your work, how to craft a better case study, and how to prep for job interviews. And I love Jeff's approach to storytelling here. It's not your simple once upon a time kind of stuff. And since you're an amazing listener, and I know that this course will help you out so much, I'm stoked to get everybody listening a 10% discount if you use the code BeyondUX when you check out. So head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/storytelling and use the code BeyondUX to get 10% off Jeff's course. Learn some incredible techniques to influence your team and advance your UX career. And if you haven't done already, please consider subscribing to the Beyond UX Design podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're a regular here on these live events and you feel like you're getting something out of it, I would really appreciate you telling some friends about it. That would help me out so much. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Rodney, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, and Marty for all their support. And if you want to join all those fine folks and help us keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get rough transcripts, exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. You can instant access right now for $5 a month. That's a dang old steal. For more information on how you can support the show and help people find out about what we're doing, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. So I have got the one and only Lena Kul on the show today. Let me go ahead and bring Lena on. Lena, I need to find the little button to turn you on. There you go. Lena has been pivotal in shaping the careers of designers. As the lead designer and research recruiter at Miro, she built a top European design team before transitioning into UX research, and she now runs a successful advisory practice guiding designers and UX researchers in career transitions and job searches. She recently launched the Maven course, Master Your Product Design and UX Research Job Search, which helps, I think, with 60 people, UX professionals, improve their skills. I am so excited to have you on, Lena. Welcome to Beyond UX Design Live. I hope you are ready to answer a shit ton of questions that we got about job hunts. So welcome to Beyond UX Design Live. How's it going?
Excited to answer all the questions. Definitely.
All right. Awesome. All right. There's a little bit of delay. I don't know if it's just me. It could be my internet. Before we get started, I want to know, everybody listening, where you're hanging out from. So let us know. I love seeing people from all over the world hanging out on Beyond UX Design Live events. Lena, I'm sure, is excited to hear that as well. So we have got a ton of questions, Lena. I real quick before we do get started, I want to let everybody know: post your questions in the chat. Make sure you can do that at any point throughout. We are going to hop back and forth between the stuff you guys are posting in YouTube and LinkedIn chats, and we also got some questions that people submitted ahead of time. So shout out to everybody who did that. We got a lot of questions, Lena. You ready to just sort of get started, dig into it?
Yeah,
All right.
let's do that.
So the first question that came up a lot, and I actually took a few questions and kind of combined them into my own version of this question because I think this is a really interesting one. So a lot of people recently have been seeing on LinkedIn, especially, the talk of craft and the importance of craft. You mentioned in the interview also sort of the craft being an actual step, the judging the craft. So there's been a lot of talk on craft, hard skills versus soft skills on LinkedIn, and I know the answer might be it depends. But can you speak to what recruiters are looking for when it comes to hard skills versus soft skills? Do you consider craft, one or the other? Is there a mix? Is there a desired ratio? How do you feel? What do you think about when you think about craft and hard skills and soft skills?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, just by chance, was listening to Hank's answer to that question
Mm,
today on Sarah's podcast as well, and I was like, okay, that's definitely something that is also on my mind. From the previous experience that I had, for example, craft round was indeed the round where we would have the portfolio deep dive session and also the whiteboarding
hmm
exercise. By craft, I don't think we necessarily meant only hard skills, but if I I think in the craft skills, I really put more of those designs, literally designing, building beautiful and also extremely functional solutions. I would definitely put research part into the, definitely everything that makes a designer a great
hmm
designer. Um, in the soft skills part, and so like hard skills are the craft skills, I would say. Soft skills side, there's definitely communication and storytelling. I think that's something that we've been talking about for many months at this point because it is one of the major competencies, for example, that makes you a senior designer or doesn't let you be a
hmm
senior designer and up. Collaboration skills, for example,
Yeah.
thinking on the spot. Like it is a skill, really, like being able to adapt quickly and come up with a solution no matter who is standing in front of you. I in the interview, are you working with the founder of the company and it's a big corporation, whatsoever. Maybe even like resolving conflicts, right? Like how much can you mitigate a conflict across disciplines in your team to actually bring up all the best things that you can do from your teamwork. So those are the soft skills. So yes, I definitely, would put in one bucket and then the soft skills in the other. However, no matter how beautiful your designs are and no matter how great your problem solving skills, if you cannot tell me a good story and if you cannot explain me your thinking process in the craft round, most likely you
hmm
will not be hired. So back
Yeah.
in the days when I was working at Miro, could have been the most talented, so crafty designer on the market. But if you couldn't communicate, you could not get a job. And so, I definitely think that we all need to be thinking about our skills as an extension of our potential. And I wouldn't necessarily say that hard skills are more important or soft skills are more important. Both are hard to develop and both are extremely important, depending on situations, depending on the outcome that is expected by the business and the team. What you have more coming to you, some people are more better with the tools, talking and thinking on their feet and things like that. But if I were to give an advice out of this question, I would say definitely try to.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's sort of, I hear soft skills a lot, the word soft skills, and I've been trying to reframe it as sort of foundational skills because, again, just like I'm glad to hear that from a recruiter's perspective, both are important. Being able to design an amazing interface is obviously very important, but also being able to convince the rest of the team, the stakeholders, that is the best choice is also very important. And so, design, I don't think ever speaks for itself. I think it's too subjective, and so people are going to be expecting you to convince them. So I think that's really important. And so I love that, like, desired ratio. I don't know. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that. Even in a place like Miro, big companies and stuff, those soft skills are just as important. So we got a lot of questions similar to this, and I want to ask a follow-up question. What are some ways that a candidate, you mentioned, in the interview in the craft round, explaining your work, but what are some ways that a candidate can highlight those, I'll say, foundational skills? Is there a way that's better than the other? Is it how you word your case study? Is it just in the interview? Is it in those sort of screen calls? How does a candidate show off those other foundational skills?
This is an excellent question, and oh god, I hate giving that salesy answer. Always be closing. So every interaction with the company is your opportunity to show who you are and what kind of skills you bring to the table. Even if you have this call with the recruiter after you had a call with the hiring manager, with the team, and they bring you a feedback, you need to think like, what else do you want to find out? What kind of questions are you asking? How do you get the information? How do you speak? It's all very important because, for example, for me, every interaction with the candidate, if the candidate just comes up with very interesting insights from what they've heard from the interview that they just experienced, learned, and what they would like to, I'm like, okay, wow, they listened, they really seem to be able to put a nicely question together. Some people seem ask those greatly created, like, put together questions, and I'm like, that's, like, you had time to think about it, why can't you come prepared? So I think every interaction with the company could be an amazing opportunity to show that you can listen, you can talk, you can present. Also, like, curiosity, it's a skill.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a competency that everyone wants to assess, because for designers and researchers it's so to be curious, but how do you show it in the process? And so it really comes down to the questions that you ask, and sometimes it can be as small and random as you would think, but the company is always pointing those things out and kind of seeing those green flags to hire you.
Green flags. I like thinking about the green flags versus just constantly red flags because, I feel like a lot of people, they hear like all these red flags and stuff that like make it hard for them to get a job. But I think it's also good to have, a North Star of things to strive towards, things that you see that work that people can actually go to. So this is sort of, I guess this might be a question about a red flag. And I apologize, I did not write the names down. I copied and pasted. So I didn't write the names on the people who asked this question, but this was one of the questions that came through the form on our website. And I thought this was a really good question. In the recent podcast episode, Lena, you talked about many people failing the craft round. I guess this is a red flag question, but what are the most common reasons why candidates fail the craft round? What do they do wrong?
Yeah, this is a very good question. And as I explained already, like, craft round in many companies, it wouldn't be just portfolio deep dive or just whiteboard and challenge or take home task. It would be a combination of both, because they want to see how you behave live, and maybe also get to know your previous work. And that's where the portfolio deep dive, for example, comes in really well. The major reasons, for example, in portfolio deep dive, where you have to present your case studies, one of the biggest problems that the candidates actually don't pay attention to, which is crazy, is timing. So we prep the candidates and we say that you're going to have 40 minutes to present 2 case studies. There will be 5 minutes, for example, icebreaker, and then 20 minutes is going to be Q&A. You can ask a couple of questions, we ask you a couple of questions. And then the candidates go into that mode being like, I really want to get to the end of my case study, because that's where maybe like impact is, and this is my baby, and I've created this product, and now I created this almost like pitch deck to this product. And so unfortunately there is very little awareness of like what the time is, and am I still on time to actually present it. And quite frequently we wouldn't even stop the candidates, because for us it's quite a red flag. If you don't know what the time is, imagine that you go into like senior leadership.
Right.
and you need to pitch that one key insight that you found out and why you have to be attacking that problem instead of this one. And like, once again, we were hiring only for like very senior levels, but on senior plus level, we definitely expect you to be able to do that. The second very interesting thing in the portfolio deep dive specifically is like, did you adapt your case study for a user who is seeing it for the first/second time? Because quite often there would be the team members that haven't seen your portfolio. I've seen it as a recruiter, the hiring manager have seen it. And so quite often the hiring manager and a designer would be there, or like designer and a PM. And so if you start going into this nitty gritty, we had 50 key insights, and this is all of them. And those are the personas that we've created out of them. And we had 6 iteration cycles. Like, I want to know why. Like, what was it that was like pushing you? But people literally start showing all screenshots because they think like, okay, this is my space to show more details in my case study. But sometimes less is more, and like literally the balance is extremely important. So this is like a major red flag for us, that you cannot adapt to a user of that specific event, kind of, that specific presentation. In the whiteboarding challenges, I cannot speak for every company, but this is what's like really common from the conversations with other design recruiters. I mean, we all know that solving a problem means that you come, you read the task, or maybe you got it, and then you kind of go into that process, you show how you would be addressing it, and then we all potentially as humans would strive to like give the answer, like, this is my solution, this is how I would approach that. But for example, for us, it was very important to see how you would be approaching this problem. Right. How do you make sure that this is the right problem to solve? What are your questions around this problem? What other resources will you need to solve it? Especially in UXR, for example. Like, what are the methodologies? How many users? Like, how are you going to recruit them? How to recruit them? If you're not going through all of that, and you try to just get sites, for us, it's a major red flag. Spending some time on the problem. I think what's also really disappointing, depending on the whiteboarding challenge, because they are different. Some companies would expect you to create some visual. Some companies wouldn't want you to create that visual. So if you are expected to create it, you have to make sure that you are able to create at least something. Because unless you reach that point, you did not complete the case study. However, if no one told you that that is expected, and you feel that you get into the end of the time that you actually received from the company, and you still would like to unpack some of the things, some candidates would still, like, they would leave that space unfinished, unresolved, undiscovered, and then go and create some of the visuals. I'm like, okay, yeah, that looks nice, but what are we going to do about it? Like, does it work? Right. Did you solve the right problem? Like, what's the user going to think? So those are the interesting, definitely aspects to think about. The last thing that I definitely want to mention for very senior, once again, roles, like, I cannot speak about junior roles because I simply don't know. I never hired for junior talent. And every time when juniors come to me for courses or one-on-one advising sessions, there is a lot of conversion afterwards for them because I train them as if they were seniors. And it's painful, and they get a lot of very, feedback that they don't want to receive because it's a lot usually, but then yes, it works really well. But basically the thing that like the senior plus levels definitely have to be considering is that you're sitting in front of people and it's a whiteboarding challenge. And the reason why you're not sitting with one person on that call is that this is your potential team setup. And this is your opportunity to show how you're going to be tackling this problem together. So unless you engage them, try to work with them on that problem, we have questions to how silent are you going to be? Being like, I'm a designer, I'm going to go and do my thing and then bring you the solution. This is not necessarily what many companies are looking for. You shouldn't be given the power for others to lead the session. You are the lead facilitator, but are you checking with them? Are you trying to get some input? Are you trying to get some good ideas from them? And they will have,
Right.
sometimes they
Yeah.
also try to create that facilitation kind of, experience for you as well. So yeah, this is something that I would definitely also consider thinking about, like collaborating with your interviewers.
Yeah, I love that. And going back to the question about hard versus soft skills and foundational skills, I mean, where it's not black and white and it's not one or the other, right? And this is where I personally feel like it drives me crazy when people talk about craft and they're talking about Figma and they're talking about visual design and things like that. Creating beautiful interfaces, that's certainly part of craft, but communicating with your team, communicating with stakeholders, getting to that point where the visuals actually solve the right problem is also craft. And then selling that idea to somebody is also craft. So anyway, I
Yeah.
love that you call that out. And just thinking back to that last question about hard versus soft skills, that's, I think it's impossible to say one or the other. It's so silly, but I'm glad to hear you say that because I think that is exactly the point of whiteboard challenges is to sort of get a peek into that. And
Mm.
there's certainly critiques of that. People neurodivergent perhaps might not do really well in those scenarios and things like that. But I think it is one of the best ways, I think, to get an insight into how someone might work. And so I'm really happy to hear you call those out. All right, we got some questions on the comments here on YouTube. Shout out to everybody listening to YouTube. So glad you could join us. Carlos Martinez, how do you see the current job market for experienced designers who excel in research, strategy, and business-oriented design, but may lack hands-on craft expertise like advanced Figma skills? How do you see the current job market for them?
I mean, if you're senior, you have to have extensive experience. That's the reality. And so I think, sorry, was it for researchers or designers? Just
I
to
think he was
answer
talking
this
more like
question.
people with strategy
Mm,
and sort of the research end versus the hands-on visual design part.
okay, yes. Um, so yeah, this is a good question. It's more like, because indeed there are like more strategic designers, like almost like service designers, even,
Mhm,
because I feel like service design is on the rise. But many companies, especially like smaller companies, don't understand what service design is, and they call it
mhm,
strategic design, where you have to have some hands-on exposure, but you also think a lot about the flows, and like how you're gonna scale it. And that's where the companies see it as strategy. um, I overall think if you have a combination of both, you can literally go for any role at this point because both are expected. If you are very much into, kind of working with the roadmaps and goals, and maybe even like some part of the service design and research, right? Like really being that, almost like, what is the future for our product, like, where are we going with this product, but you cannot design this solution. That might be a bit complicated at this point in time, and I would recommend then considering some fractional and freelance work jobs. If you can really double down on that very strategic and very like interesting, very ambiguous, big questions, like when you come in and you don't understand what the problem is, you have no
mhm.
idea what you're trying to solve. Like, who are our customers, what are they doing, like what would they need, we have this offering, and then out of nowhere we saw, oh, they actually want something else, but what is it, something else that they want? This is a great place to come in and to really kind of, run some of the amazing, like, research and potential workshops, and really aligning the team, getting all those insights from inside and outside, but then just passing it to the team to deliver the solution. If you were to go inside in-house, and like, what are the roles on the market, the in-house roles would expect you to do both. And that's where the question of the seniority comes in, because to me, if you're skilled in hands-on craft and skilled in strategy and research, and like flows, and working with like super senior stakeholders on the roadmap, and like like where the company is going, this is simply senior staff level role. Like that's what we would expect, for example, back in the days, but we would also expect super duper craft.
I love it. Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, I think it's one of those things like with seniors, like the sort of this or that. If you're going for a design role, a product design role, and you aren't doing the hands-on visual design, prototyping, things like that, and if you haven't done that in the past, I would question like why you're going for that role now as like a senior level. Like if you've been doing research in the past, I don't know, maybe this is like I'm sort of filling in some gaps here. These are my own questions, but from Carlos's question about I have research strategy, I'm going for a design role. Um, would you advise that person to maybe not apply to that role or go for a research role where there isn't that expectation of the visual design aspect? Carlos, feel free to like hop in there and if you got any follow-up questions, but I don't know, Lena, I'm just kind of curious what you think.
Yeah, this is such a good question, Jeremy. Thank you so much for asking because, even like today, I had a conversation with a person who reached out and they're like, yeah, like, can you review my CV? Because I'm really like not getting any traction. And I'm like, okay, so well, like, what is the role that you're looking for? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as like, these kind of applications work the same as marketing. If you just shoot at everyone, you don't get anyone, right? Like this is literally the funnel. Remember we talked about the funnel?
Yeah,
This is
you
not
got to
how
do
it
the hand
works.
signal. That's right.
This is the funnel. So indeed, I think that's a very good question to ask. And I recently on my company's page, I posted a very cool mirror, cool because I built it, but very useful, I believe, mirror template, kind of reflect on what you've done and what are your major strengths and what kind of projects you've delivered. Literally look at the job descriptions that you're going after and kind of, compare and be like, okay, so but look, do I really fit? Do I qualify?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the questions that we all should be asking ourselves. Like, do I
Yep.
qualify? Not because I think I qualify, but like if I see the requirements, will
Mm-hmm.
I actually have proper chances to go through? And indeed, if the company says, yes, you have to be strategic and it's like a senior role, like a lead product designer role, and you need to be hands-on with research, you're like, okay, I'm strategic and I'm hands-on with research, but then also being excellent in craft, and you're like, well, but I have 2 out of 3. But let's think as well about the weight of those competencies. What
Mm-hmm.
are the primary competencies? What are the secondary competencies? If you can deliver and run research, but maybe you lack a little bit of strategy, potentially that would something that they would be okay. And potentially they would need just 3 out of 3 because that's the market reality. If they say those are the things that we need, they will be looking and they will find that person
Mm-hmm.
because there is a lot of folks on the market
Right.
who are looking for roles. So yes, I would definitely be a little bit more targeted with like where I'm going after and like who am I on the market. Even if I were like I, for example, have like a year of experience in user research, right? But I've worked with super senior team. I've dealt with lots of projects. I've been exposed to extremely high quality design product. So I would argue that I'm not a junior. But if I were to go into the interviews, I would either have to think how I really sell myself through my network, or be more realistic. What can I get with what I bring kind of to the table as like how like companies would perceive me from the outside.
Yeah, and I don't want to put like words in Carlos's mouth, by the way, and assume that he does not have the visual design skills. But I'm reading his question again, hands-on expertise, and he specifically calls out advanced Figma skills. And I don't know, I'd love to get your thoughts here. I hate to keep harping on the crafting because there's a lot of really other awesome questions. But when you think about the hands-on hard skills of visual design or design, moving pixels around, advanced Figma skills might be something that one company is looking for. But if you've been using Axure for 10 years or Sketch, I still feel like you've got the hard skills, and learning how to do those things in something like Figma is not that much of a leap to be able to do. And so I don't know, maybe there are people like you said who actually meet the Figma requirement. And so all things equal, I'm going to pick the person who can do Figma. But I don't know. I feel like there's maybe you're thinking short, or you're Carlos. I don't know. Maybe you're thinking like too little of your skills there. If are there those transferable from app to app, tool to tool? Because let's face it, 5-10 years from now, Figma's probably going to be gone. There's going to be something else to replace it. So I don't know. I'm curious what you think.
I don't know. I personally don't think so. Well, unless Figma really stays what it is right now and someone is going to overtake it because they're going to put a lot of AI that will work eventually. And, you will not have to have as many advanced skills to actually deliver fast solutions, then potentially yes. But I also, this is also like a question of what to, and is senior product designer role the role for you? Because I personally, I've interviewed thousands of people and I've never met a designer who is not hands-on with Figma. I've only met one designer who is not very hands-on with Figma because they worked at Sketch. So,
Okay.
and I'm like, okay, fair enough, like it explains everything, and, good for you. Like, it was a great product. Obviously, it didn't work out, but it started right. But if I were in the situation that I need to look for a job and I am strategic, I'm, hands-on with research, I potentially would still go after those roles, but I would really double down on Figma because it's like, I feel it's a must-have requirement at the moment.
Okay. Fair. So if you're familiar with Axure, and this is sort of one of those things, like I've seen people talk about, oh, I like Axure, I like Sketch, I like these other tools, or I use those other tools, whether you like them or not. Learn Figma. It's not that hard. I mean, as someone who was, I used to use Axure. I loved Axure. I used to use Sketch. I like Sketch. Going and learning how to do those things in Figma was really very easy to be. I mean, I'm not saying I'm like really good or anything, but it wasn't that hard compared to the other things that I've done in my career. Right. Go take a class, go watch YouTube, go do some tutorials, and just beef up your Figma skills. And fake it till you make it. I mean, if you can do all the other things, I promise you can learn Figma. It's really not that hard. I don't want to
100%.
diminish that. I don't want to diminish anyone who's like a master at Figma, but the baseline skill set I don't think is that hard to reach. So I don't know. All right. Let's move on. We got a lot of really great questions in the chat here. Anne asked a really good question. Anne Cantera, thanks for hanging out. The sheer volume of applicants versus the small volume of jobs. So we're not at equilibrium with supply and demand. That's a huge issue. How do you speak, or can you speak to strategies on how to deal with the sheer volume of applicants? And sort of open-ended questions. So Anne, if you don't mind, I'm gonna sort of maybe like refine this a little bit, but you've got 300 applicants. You see that 300 applicants have already applied. How do you deal with that as an applicant? Do you go for it, or do you just say, screw it, it's too late, they've probably found somebody? I know we kind of touched on this a little bit in our interview, but what do you
Yeah.
think?
We definitely touched on it in the interview, so I would recommend highly to everyone to listen to the podcast. And I also had the whole talk on it, which is on my Maven school, so check it out too. But in very short, I think definitely there is a great chance to get that job. I personally still believe that around 50% of the applicants would be completely irrelevant from those who apply, because oh yeah, let me try and maybe it works out. Like, oh, I have 1 skill out of 10, so maybe it's my lucky day. So like, people literally go with those kind of things. And like, when I post those posts, people literally say volume equals luck and luck equals jobs. So that's a proven mindset that's on the market, and this is why we haven't what we haven't. So I definitely say, if you do think that you qualify, apply, but make sure that you qualify. So how do you make sure that you qualify? Once again, like, you can literally copy the job description, put it in ChatGPT, and say, like, identify the key competencies that the companies are looking for, and then you come up with those competencies, and then you look back at yourself. What are the projects that I worked? What is the most impact that I've delivered? What is it that like is very, very easy for me to do that maybe others struggle? Like, that's the superpowers basically that you would have. And so you can see whether it correlates or not. There's like a little bit of encouragement from my side, because indeed, know, male candidates would go after the jobs that they hit 3 out of 10. Female candidates wouldn't go when they hit 8 out of 10. So be critical. If you hit a good 70%, you might be going after it. It's like 65 to 70%. I think that's good, because once again, in job description there might be primary competencies and secondary competencies, and as you analyze job description, the very top 4 to 5 are primary competencies. This is your must-haves. If you're not hitting any of them, don't even waste your time. If you're hitting them, maybe not hitting some of the ad, it's okay. You can try. But I would want to once again say that just applying will land you on top of 300 applications, and it's going to take days, weeks, and maybe even months for a recruiter to get back to you. So what I would highly recommend, and go and network. Go network with the team members of that company. Go network with anyone else, because there might be roles that you're not seeing. And that's like, to honest question, I highly recommend to adapt this mindset that not everything that you see is what it is on the market. I'm speaking with so many small interesting companies nowadays who are hiring, but you will never see that job ad on the website
Right.
because they don't want the madness. They don't have a recruitment team. They don't want to spend money on the ATS and things like that.
Right.
So you need to go and, especially if you want to go into teeny tiny startups, which I would highly recommend, especially for very senior folks, because that's how founding members are being created. This is how you grow into the head of design role. This is how you prove your craft and strategy and then grow your team. And if you don't want to, go into principal, whatever. But yeah, there are many more roles that you might think, but you have to network and you have to create those connections to be able to know about them.
Yeah. So follow-up question from Ann. All things equal, does getting in early make a difference? Like if I am perfectly qualified, I submit the minute it goes live versus 3 weeks later. What are your thoughts there? Is that kind of is it a deal breaker that you're later than the other person, or what are your thoughts? Do you go with the
Yes.
first qualified candidate?
Yeah, well, I mean, there won't be only one, because similarly to anything in business, you wouldn't be wanting to put like all the eggs in one basket, right? So like, you don't want to hope that one candidate is going to go through the
Mhm.
process, because where are you left if they don't? That's it. You start from scratch. But yes, definitely, if you land in the first even 100 applicants, your chances to go through the process and being hired are much higher than if you go afterwards, unless what happens quite often, roles get reposted and everyone's
Mm.
like, oh, they're all reposted. What should I do? It's a really good sign. The same, like, like we all creators. That means no one is doing anything with it anymore. And we want a little bit more traction. And that's the same with the jobs. No one is applying. No one has gone through, like, they didn't hire anyone. And so they repost the job to get more applications. So you should go for it once again, as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's interesting about the repost. So you might be the first person to get that repost, but that thing is from like 6 months ago, and they're just reposting it again. But it's also really interesting to think about. Like just because someone applied and they're a great fit does not mean they're going to accept the offer. And I think that's something as a recruiter. In the interview, I talked about the Pareto principle and 80-20 rule, and you're like, no, it's way off. It's not even close to that. So anyway,
Mm.
to sort of follow up to that, check out the episode because we did talk a little bit about that in there. So that's a really good answer. Thank you for clarifying. We got a really good question from Nick Zechner. Thanks for hanging out on LinkedIn. When reviewing portfolios, does the format matter? PDF versus Figma, preview versus a website versus something else? Does the format matter? Is it how you explain it, how you show it?
Mm. We never discriminated any formats, so I personally don't care, and I know that the hiring managers that I work with also didn't care. What matters is structure, visual appeal, accessibility. Can I reach it? Can I not? Like, did you put your shiny website and then all the case studies are behind the password and the password is nowhere to be found? Asking myself questions then. So yeah, those things are quite important. I also think you need to be kind of considering like how much time do you have to put the website together? Because honestly, I don't care if it's a website. And
Mm.
even like so many people invest so much time into that like landing page. And unless it's amazing and there are animations, there are insanely cool colors that represent your if it's like your picture and your landing page, why do you need that? I've already seen all of
Mhm.
that. I've seen your LinkedIn, I've seen your CV by now in the CV. So what I want is the case study. I want one case study that's going to make a strong impression, wow me, and I'm going to go after you basically. So once again, Peach, if you're listening to it, please pay me for giving the advices about you to everyone. But I think Peach is a great product to actually build your case studies. Canva is the same basically, but what's the big plus is that you create the slide decks which are very easy to build actually because they have plenty of templates. It's very designy, it's very clean. I mean, Figma sites would be the same, but you can also share basically a public link. And if you want to make an adjustment just before the call, you can do that and it's going to be reflected. So it's so easy to work with it. Why wouldn't you do that? So yes, if you don't have time to think about UX and navigation and accessibility of your website, don't bother. Create 2 to 3 very strong case studies and you're good to go.
I love it. All right. So we did not talk about this in the interview, and I cannot believe it didn't come up. But the ATS bots. So the bots. I had a question here from where did it go? From Kunal. And I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, by the way. And he asked a question about resumes and green flags, but I want to sort of mix this up with the ATS and getting canned immediately by AI and making decisions for humans and all that stuff. When you think about the ATS bots and the resumes, I don't want to. We don't need to go too deep into how the ATS works because we only have like 15 minutes. But the myth obviously is that ATS bots the AI. It's just deleting me from the list and it's rejecting me immediately based on some red flag or something and beat the bots. Like there's some way to actually beat the bots. When it comes to the ATS and those initial, I guess like the first point of contact is often the resume coming through the applicant system. Can you talk a little bit about the resume and the ATS and how that actually works and some things that, using your language of green flags, things that you should be looking for that are on your resume that help you get noticed? Or I don't know how to even word this question because I'm not exactly sure how the process works, but how do you set up your resume to get selected via the ATS?
Yeah. Well, ATS doesn't select you, so that's first of all. So,
There we go.
Mr.
I love
Jeremy,
it.
that's not a very good question.
Oh,
um,
get selected through the. Maybe it's worth then digging into. It's like if you could spend like 2 minutes
yeah,
talking about how that actually works, because there is the myth about the bots and the bots reject you immediately
yeah.
and that kind of stuff. So maybe do that first.
And indeed, so like you apply and basically your CV lands in the ATS, and the ATS is like a storage platform for all the
Mhm.
information, including your CV, your portfolio, and things like that. And so what the market is talking about nowadays is that some of the ATSs adopt like building new features. And basically the bot is like the feature that scan your CV
Mhm.
and give a recruiter. And so potentially they would even, I would imagine how I would like it to
Right.
work. They would be like green candidates, so lots of green flags, candidates, more, and then red can get rid of them, kind of, don't waste too much time. But this is how I imagine it to work in my hand. I've done research, like I have not found in one ATS that can do that. The bots that you may be talking to is, for example, as you apply, there is a trigger that you can build, and it's been there for years and years and years. And now it's very relevant because it's basically just like volume kind of application. I used to use it when I worked at N26 because it was like the super hyper growth hiring. We had to hire so many people. We had to have more filters. And so basically what you can do, like you apply and then the ATS sends you a space. What are your salary expectations? When can you start? How many years of experience do you have? Are you hands-on with ABC tools? And if you respond to some, I mean, the idea is that it would reject you, but once again, the biggest ATSs have the
Right.
human like myself would have to go and see. I would imagine you to answer, so you're out, and I'm not gonna even look at your CV. So when people speak about immediately being rejected, it's interesting because like back in the days, like I would review CVs, and sometimes there would be like CVs that came in like 1 or 2 minutes ago, and I would reject them because they didn't fit. But no one was screaming that it's like AI bots are rejecting us because AI wasn't the
Mhm.
thing. Even though, once again, back at N26, we had AI friend David, and I would be like, hey, David, go and schedule my call. And David, I don't know what happened to David, but it was a proper AI tool because it could go and say, hi, I'm a like AI assistant of that recruitment team. Can you give me your availability? But that was it, right? Like once again, there always had to be a manual trigger to like a prompt, right? Like all AI is working on the prompt. And so basically it's staying the same way. And so from my research about what ATS AI and bots can and cannot do is that they are assessing the quality of your CV. In very rare cases, once again, I didn't find which ATS have it, and there are several criteria. Can AI slash human understand what you're saying in your CV? Are there quantifiable experiences? So, like, are you talking about impact, metrics, number of users, whatsoever? And some keywords that they're looking, so using in their job description, and they would be looking in your CV. So how to prepare for that? Basically, you have to just build a proper CV. So use your proper titles. Don't use titles that you imagine for yourself. Check what the titles
Right,
are on the
right.
market and use them. Speak about impact. This is what I've done. This is what came out of it. What that was the impact. And while you're speaking about it, incorporate the keywords, and that's it. Your CV is ready to go.
I love it. All right. That's a really great way to think about it. And Kunal, I hope that answers some questions, but the keywords, trying to load it, not like faking it, obviously, but like finding the keywords in the job description that actually apply to you. How do you word your bullet points and all that stuff to meet the keywords instead of saying one word, use another word if those words are synonyms and things like that? That's kind of what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
cool. All right.
yeah,
So
exactly.
Kunal, you have multi-part question, but we have a ton of awesome questions, and I don't even know if we're going to get to all of them. Hong asked a really great question. If someone's neurodivergent on the spectrum, how should they approach the interview process? Should they disclose that as soon as possible? If they might not do well in a certain scenario, how do you think that should work?
I think so, and I've had many, many instances like that. Especially when I would like on the very first conversation, I would explain the process, and I would say like, yeah, there would be like a whiteboarding challenge, and we want to see how you think on the spot. And a person would be like, well, actually, like I'm not very good at thinking on the spot. Like I need to go in my quiet space, and I need some
Mm-hmm.
time to think about it. But then, we would see their portfolio already. We would see their. I don't think that any companies people people who they don't speak. More of us should be thinking on a second before saying what.
Yeah.
So like I share that, and what the company should be doing, and potentially that's not to candidates, but if you are a candidate, maybe that's where you should be. I used to do, we would send the challenge day or 2 days before,
Uh-huh.
to those.
Right.
You can read it and think about it, and like, would that be okay? So I would always be in the conversation with the person, like, how
Yeah.
can we support you so we can still assess you, because yeah, it has to be fair. But like, would that work? Would one
Right.
day extra for you to think on the problem work? Maybe we would think about take home task, and everyone's like, oh, take home task is evil. But if you cannot do the take home task, and you cannot like do the
Mm-hmm.
whiteboards, and like, this is the process that we've created, and like, we also need
Right.
to comply with it, and we need to be also fair to the candidates. So I think, like, if you don't want to go into this like super stressful on the spot session, maybe a great approach. So like, I think really kind of bringing to partner potentially at the end of the conversation, being like, listen, like, I've seen, or like, you've shared the process, and some parts of the process like I'm not comfortable with, because of point in time for that,
Right.
get rid of that company, like, go
Yeah. Yeah. Name and
that,
shame.
because
Yeah.
that's not okay.
Yeah, and I think the worst thing you could do,
Exactly.
I think you would agree with this is, waiting until the last minute to say something, and then you're judged
Yes.
on criteria that everyone else might be judged on that is no longer fair for you. You put yourself in a worse position. So, I think being open and honest upfront is the best course of action. And so I love that you're calling that out. And a good recruiter, a good team would take that into account. A bad team would not, and I think says a lot about whether or not you should be continuing that process. So anyway, I love that. All right, we got a good question from Ryan on YouTube here. In regards to the cooling off period, does a true cooling off period exist? So like also like I guess reword another way, not being eligible to look for another role at that company if you've been rejected for 6 months or a year or something. Is that a thing in recruitment circles?
Yes, it is, for sure, and especially, so I would say at least 6 months. Why is that so? Doesn't even potentially depend how far you went into the process, but specifically if you did go through like recruiter screen and like hiring manager screen and maybe like even craft round, and we tell you, hey, like your presentation skills were like off point, like we can, and I this is why I would always try to give as transparent feedback as possible, because I expect you to go work and come back. I want you to come back because we already got somewhere together. But like, candidates would come back after 1 month, especially if we would give them like the soft skill feedback and be like, hey, I worked on it, so like I'm ready. No, you're not. And you also don't show yourself as like, you don't show like self-awareness, and that's also a problem kind of thing. So I would definitely say, depending on the company, 6 to 12 months is very normal. And many companies, even if you were like a great candidate, but they like, something happened, like they rejected you. Um, if you apply like even 11 months, they will reject you back. Because like that's a rule, and they will follow it. So just wait your time. And if you don't know what is this period, you can always come back to a recruiter and be like, hey, what is the timeline where I can reapply? So that's
Okay.
that's something that, yeah, you should be considering doing. Sometimes the companies wouldn't say, oh, it's 6 months or it's like that. Like I also would never say 6 months. Like we didn't have any period. But if we do give you some critical feedback and you come back in 2 months, I will not put you into the process because you did not improve. Because what, like, was it like the only thing that you were working towards, like these 2 months? Like, some things take time. And especially if it's like, we would be like, oh, this person like really didn't contribute to strategy and never worked with it. And like it's a staff level role. And then after like 6 weeks, they come back. Yeah, well, not
Yeah.
necessarily, but it would really depend on the feedback that you get. And that's why it's so important to work with the recruiter. Hey, like if I come back in three months, like how do we feel about that? Will there be new roles and things, like get that information for yourself.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so if it's one of those things too, if I apply coldly to a job, I never talk to a recruiter and I just get a rejection, it's not even worth applying again for another role, or is that like
No,
how does that?
no, that's a different thing. So like, if you
Okay.
went into the process and you got
Oh,
rejected,
okay.
then
Okay.
yes,
So if you
there's a
had a
process.
recruiter, okay.
Exactly. If
Okay.
you applied and you got rejected, it's great to understand why you got rejected, right? Like, well,
Mhm.
did you get rejected because of the some of the skills? Did you get rejected because the role got closed already,
Mhm.
and then you got rejected? Because in the ATS, the AI bot system,
The bots? Yeah.
uh, I would put like I would have a bank of reasons why I'm rejecting candidates, and then you can pull
Mm.
the reports and kind of come back to those candidates. So I honestly, once in my career, I hired a person who's been rejected 4 times in the ATS,
Wow, okay.
um, but in the span of 2 years. So they were applying, applying, applying.
Mhm.
So then I checked. I'm like, that's a very interesting candidate, and we hired. The thing is that if you applied once and you got rejected, and then you apply very quickly again and you get rejected, then afterwards, if I see you again, I will see that you were rejected on the roles. And I most likely
Yeah.
will not even check your CV and portfolio, because if you applied 1 month ago and you got rejected twice, like you wasted my time. This is how I'm gonna feel about it. And
Oh,
this is why
interesting.
you
Okay.
should be spending that time, like kind of prepping better, because you just, yeah, you're playing with fire of like being banned from that
Yeah.
company for a good year. And
Interesting.
please, please, please do not use new or fake email addresses, because the ATS will recognize you and I
Wow,
will
I didn't even
see
thought of doing
that it's the same person. And
Yeah.
it's not a great way to start the conversation with the
I
company.
was gonna say that's probably a very bad first impression if someone catches you doing that. I think like what I'm hearing from this, the takeaway is, I don't know. I hate to say this, but I wonder if it's even worth applying a cold application through LinkedIn Quick Apply if you've never talked to a recruiter or a person there. I don't even know if that's like something you would say is a general rule. I hate to say that because that's how most of us apply for jobs. Like, oh, I applied 1,000 jobs. Like I clicked the easy apply 1,000 times, but it seems like if you don't have an interaction with a person, one, you're probably not getting feedback on why you were rejected. Usually, at least I've found that. And
Yeah.
if I'm not talking to a person, I just like I'm like not even sure there's a point in applying. I don't know if you feel that's maybe a cynical way to look at it, but what do you think?
I think you can apply for sure, and like
I guess it doesn't hurt.
companies do hire people who apply. Like it's called inbound, obviously. Like
Uh-huh.
companies do hire inbound, but you do need to qualify for the role really well. So that's like if you're not sure whether you qualify and you just cold apply, I mean, even if you network and you're not qualified for the role, you will get rejected. Like, and this is the point as well. You just have more chances to get into the process, but it doesn't mean that you're going to pass the process. So once again, you just need to qualify. But I think, yes, it is like, should you or should you not call apply? Yes. But are your chances higher if you network? Yes, in an
Yeah.
easy way.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. We have got 4 minutes left. I was going to leave some time for some silly this or that questions, but we have got so many questions here that I kind of hate ending it early. Do we have time? Maybe one more
Yeah.
question. And so let's see. We've got like Kevin, Bill. I'm sorry. We had Lisa. We didn't get to. I don't think we're going to get to your questions today. I really apologize. Maybe we can like talk after. I can send you the questions and I don't know, maybe we can do like a follow-up thing through like text or something. I don't know. Anyway, this was a question from Bella. If a recruiter asks for an initial call where they suss you out, like a pre-interview screen, what should I expect them to ask? Is it as formal as an interview? What would be some good questions I could ask back? So what to expect from them and what can I ask them in that pre-screen?
So every interview is a formal interview, and this is like what
Mm,
I find so interesting
yeah.
when candidates come in not prepared because it's a screen.
Hmm.
It's not a pre-screen, it's a screen. It's
It's
a
a screen, right?
screening interview. I'm screening you for that
Hmm.
job. I'm your very first point of contact with the company, and I'm the gatekeeper. I'm going to decide whether or not you go and spend time with the team. So when people literally come not prepared, or how many candidates I had that I would ask a question and they would be like, well, I can answer this question when I talk to the team. I'm like, I'm the team. Start answering this question. So 100% be prepared, 100% be ready to pitch. You pitch on the recruiter call. And this is how you build a strong impression about yourself.
Yeah.
What are the good questions to ask at the end of the conversation? I mean, first of all, you need to be asking what you want to know. What is the team? How big is it? How's it working? What is the design maturity and culture within the team? How's your culture working? If you could change one thing tomorrow, what would that be? Like get personal with that person. What do you love about this company? What don't you like about this company? You can ask about the funnel. How busy is it there? Like, do you have any candidates at the end of the funnel? If you were to get someone at the end of the funnel, but you have a promising candidate, are you gonna wait for them to get to the end of the funnel, or are you gonna hire first come, first serve? So lots of things to ask. How your promotion cycles work. How do you invest in the growth of the talent? Is there any mentoring system in place that I could
Hmm.
be actually benefiting? Or maybe you want to mentor someone, right? Like anything that you would like to ask. But if you're completely out of the imagination, just go to your best friend for the hiring process, and I mean it. It's your best friend in the hiring process. Chat GPT and be like, hey, I'm talking to a recruiter, what are the good questions
Yeah.
to ask at the end of the
Yeah.
conversation? Boom. Like you,
Mm.
come on, Fox. We are in the era where there are so many tools that support us. Use them.
Yeah.
And it does help. If you wrote a CV, you write it by yourself, but do run it through ChatGPT, because, like, I don't want to see typos in your CV anymore. Like,
Right.
at this point, it's unforgettable. And at the end of the conversation, I do expect good questions. And what helps a lot at the rest of the other processes, ask what competencies are trying to be assessed, and then ask
Oh,
questions
yeah.
around those competencies as well. If they are trying to assess collaboration, ask them, how do you collaborate in the team? How do you build that collaboration system and things like that?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think like I've been on a bunch of hiring panels interviewing people over the years, and I think the worst thing for me is when we say, "Do you have any questions?" Like, "No, I'm good. I don't have any questions." Like, just ask something, even if you've already
Major red
asked it
flag.
another person in another interview. Ask it again. Just ask something. It just shows it shows a lot. I think especially about UX designers, and we always talk about how we're so curious. I'm curious. Bullshit. If you don't have any questions, like you can't be curious. I don't know what you're talking about.
Sure.
So, all right, Lena. Well, this has been awesome. Sorry to everybody out there who we did not get to your questions. I apologize. Lena, this has been so much fun. I've got a little outro script I'm going to read. There's so many buttons and things on this interface that I don't even know where to click right now because the screen is minimized to turn you off. So do you mind just hanging out while I finish this thing? Is that okay? You cool with that? All right. Well, that is it for Lena and me for today. I hope we helped to shed a little bit of light on the recruitment. We didn't even talk about the funnel really today. We had so many other things, so many good questions. But I would love to know what you think. Have you used any of these strategies that we talked about today? Let us know what you think on LinkedIn. Shoot us an email, hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you like what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can actually go to our Luma site, lu.ma, I think it is, something like that, or Google Luma. It's not luma.com. And you can subscribe to our calendar and get notified anytime we do live events. And if you feel like you're getting something out of this, please, for the love of God, tell some friends. I would appreciate that. All right. Are you ready for that 25% off coupon code? Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/book to get your paperback copy of Master Your Craft Beyond Pixels and Prototypes for 25% off. Use the code LIVE at checkout. Get free shipping on all orders over $30. Help keep the show independent and ad-free. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/support to find out how. Join my good buddy Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin was hanging out today. Thank you, Kevin. Jason, Michelle, Marty, many others, and help keep the show independent and ad-free. That would be amazing. $5 a month. That's a goddamn steal. If you've been sitting on building your new website, whoops, sorry, which one? There it is, Wix. If you've been sitting on building your new website, Wix Studio can help get you there faster. Wix Studio is a powerful platform that lets you create and manage websites easily. And with Wix Studio, you can quickly adapt your designs for every device, reuse assets, and my favorite, export from Figma and much more. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/Wix to start creating today. Do yourself a favor, head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/storytelling. Use the promo code BeyondUX at checkout to get 10% off Jeff's storytelling course to learn some super valuable ways to influence your team and advance your UX career. And where was the other one? Support. I don't know. There it is. Remember to sign up for the newsletter. Check out all the past episodes at beyonduxdesign.com. I hope you keep coming back for more great UX tips from Beyond UX Design. And until next time, Lena, remember you're more than a designer because there's more to UX than design. That's it for us today.